Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the West Lindsey series. This is one of the 9 districts of Lincolnshire and one of the county's most rural. It has 128 civil parishes. Let's see which one this episode's all about. Welcome back to West Lindsey, everybody. Now, today you find me starting on the A631 outside a very well-known and very popular pub. And I'm hoping this traffic calms down so I can get to talk about it. This is the second attempt I've made at trying to do this intro. That right there is the White Heather. And it's not just a pub, it does all sorts of events. It does things like weddings and baptisms and christenings and other functions, basically. A lot of people know it, a lot of people love it. And it falls within today's parish, which the majority of is over there on a former RAF base. Welcome to Hemswell Cliff. The West Lindsey series is sponsored by Gainsborough Cycles 01427 617 752. For all your cycling needs, this is your one-stop shop, located at 20 Ropery Road or online at gainsboroughcycles.com. There's a link in the description. Gainsborough Cycles, ask for Trevor Halstead. And this video is also sponsored by Jamie's Fitness Studio, based on Low Road, Greyingham, near Curtin in Lindsey. Jamie is one busy lady. Check her out by calling 07906 749 574 or emailing hello@jamies.co.uk. Online membership is available. There's a link to her Facebook page in the description. Jamie's Fitness Studio. Get fit, get happy, get healthy. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Hemswell Cliff is one of the newest civil parishes in the West Lindsey district of Lincolnshire. It's situated on the A631 between Caenby Corner roundabout and Gainsborough. It's called Hemswell Cliff because it stands on the Lincoln Cliff escarpment, the same ridge of land which we've come across a few times before in places like Ingham. Hemswell Cliff is centred around the former RAF Hemswell, which was operational for 30 years between 1937 until its closure in 1967. When it closed, the Airfield site was subsequently redeveloped into a private trading estate, and the RAF would turn its married quarters into a residential area. This became known as Hemswell Cliff. By 2008, there was no longer an RAF presence here, and the only building they still owned was the community centre, which was sold in 2009 to an educational charity. Despite being completely civilian now, Hemswell Cliff still has a very RAF-like feel to it. As you wander around, at points you feel as though you've stepped back in time. A lot of the buildings from the airbase still stand, including the control tower. Unlike other airbases we've come across, a lot of them have been repurposed. Come with me and let's check out what they've been turned into now. We start at Hemswell Cliff's eastern boundary with Glenfern, just to the west of Caenby Corner roundabout. Our first landmark is the White Heather. Just to the north of this is Spittal Lane, which connects the A631 to Spittal in the street. To be honest, this hasn't got much to do with Hemswell Cliff. It bills itself on its website as Lincolnshire's premier venue for weddings, conferences and banqueting. It's well known to many locals. On the way to the main Hemswell Cliff village, we pass a couple of streets which are isolated from it, like for example Canberra Crescent and this one, Creampoke Crescent. Another one like this is Lancaster Green. That's where some brand new houses are currently under construction. Known as Antler Rise, these 38 new houses are built with the RAF in mind. They echo the military heritage of the area through their design. So this is where the main walk is going to start. This is Lancaster Green, I think, Lancaster Green. And I can't film anything more than from this corner because, as you can see, private road and green. I can't go onto it, can't walk around it. So this is the start point. Let's check out this hedge though. This seems perfectly legal. That's quite cool, isn't it? And all those new houses I've just shown you are off to the left up here. Hemswell Cliff is forever expanding. Now, the bit I can walk around, obviously, is on the other side of the A631. So we'll head up there and see what we can find. Also on Lancaster Green is the former Officers' Mess. Opened in 1936, the mess was converted into a hotel in the 1980s and is now known as Hemswell Court. This is the entrance to it. It's a Grade 2 listed building. Now we've crossed the A631 and we're into the main residential area. This is Kappa Avenue and behind this is Buchanan Road. All the street names on this estate bear some kind of reference to its wartime history. This is Minden Place, which is laid out in a square shape. All of the houses in Hemswell Cliff are what's known as married quarters, accommodation provided at a military base for married servicemen or servicewomen and their families. In the centre of Minden Place's square there's a small children's play area, but this is by no means the largest playground Hemswell Cliff can boast. We'll come to a much larger one shortly. You know, the funny thing is about estates like these is that even though the last aircraft would have left Hemswell years ago, it still has that sort of airbase type feel about it. It feels like you're on RAF land, when technically speaking you're not, because all these houses now are nothing to do with the airbase. They're all privately owned or rented or whatever. In fact, it's been almost 15 years now since the RAF had anything to do with Hemswell Cliff. The last building they owned was sold in 2009. We've come around the back of Minden Place now to rejoin Kappa Avenue at Anderson Road. At the top of Kappa Avenue is Hemswell Cliff's primary school. Here's a fun fact for you. A few years ago, when I was in between jobs, I used to deliver school meals to this place from Gainsborough. Fun times. The school, much like most of the estate, was originally RAF built. Around the corner on James Road, we find the village's allotments. I imagine these will go down well with some of you, despite the fact they're quite small. And back onto Kappa Avenue, we find Hemswell Cliff's biggest open green space, where there's a much bigger play area. This grassed area was also once used to display a small collection of ex-RAF aircraft. So what we're effectively doing here is we're walking around the residential area. The buildings which are more to do with the actual airbase itself are all over there, and it's like an industrial estate these days. We will be able to walk onto that, and I will be able to get really close to some of the landmarks out there, which is quite exciting. I can't wait to do that actually. But first we've got to finish walking around the houses. We're not far away from that, to be honest with you. Just a couple more streets to have a look at first, and then we'll access the industrial estate via a little path which runs sort of down the side of that multi-purpose games area over there. One of those streets is Louisburg Road, which will take us onto Buchanan Road. Again, it's more of the same style of housing, although this time it's a row of terraces on either side of the road as opposed to being laid out in a square. At the end of Buchanan Road, you hit Bettsworth Road and the other side of the green space. Over in the distance is the hard-surfaced games area known as the Hemswell Cliff Parish Council Ballpark. Let's head for that. Next to it is a building which is absolutely fascinating. This was originally a sergeant's mess. Parts of the building have been used in the past as a community centre and as a pub called the Gunners Arms. It's been stood empty for about 10 years, but in 2021 the Broadcast Engineering Conservation Group bought this building. They're going to turn it into a museum, which will house their collection of historically significant broadcasting equipment. Okay, now we're coming onto the industrial estate, and to my right here there's what I call an H block. If you look at these on an overhead image, they look like a massive letter H. There's at least 3 of them on this industrial estate, and that's one of them right there. In fact, calling them H-block buildings is entirely accurate. That's what the RAF used to call them. This one became the Blenheim Care Centre, which is now abandoned. It was closed after an unexpected inspection in 2018. A lot of the former RAF buildings have been turned into the largest antique centre in Europe. Known as Hemswell Antique Centres, there's a central car park for these on Barton Road, which used to be the base's parade ground. In that car park is a memorial which was erected in 1995. During the war, some 122 crews were lost on operations from here. Various squadrons were posted to Hemswell, including many Polish personnel flying Vickers Wellingtons. In fact, here's a board about the Polish squadrons. Between 1941 and 1943, the Polish bomber squadrons used the airfield for their operations. Hemswell operated as a dual site with a nearby overflow airfield at RAF Ingham. Those of you out there who are not familiar with Hemswell Cliff will be amazed in a few moments how many of the old RAF buildings still stand. Here we've got one which is quite a tall one. We'll talk about that one next. This building is RAF Hemswell's former water tower. What strikes me about this more than anything is the condition this is in. The concrete is at least 80 years old now and probably hasn't had any maintenance since the 1960s. Underneath the water tower is Tower Antiques. You don't need to be a genius to work out how they came up with that name. In its grounds you'll see this plane. This is a BAC Jet Provost, which was used by the RAF for training. Now we've hit Gibson Road and here's yet another antique centre. This is Astra Antiques, and this too displays something aviation related, a propeller. It's dedicated to all those who made the ultimate sacrifice while serving at RAF Hemswell. And just a few yards away is another building which looks like another water tower. I suspect this was the base's fire station, but I couldn't find anything to confirm that. Regardless, it's yet another building containing an antique centre. Now at this point I was supposed to be taking you towards the control tower. However, I didn't realise you can't get to the control tower this way. I thought you were able to walk across effectively where that lorry is. It's just behind there. However, you do get a good shot of these buildings. I'll tell you what these are next. These buildings are the former aircraft hangars. In 2009, there was a large fire at one of them, which was being used as a plastics recycling site. The fire was so intense, it closed the A631. Earlier this year, there was also a straw bale fire nearby too. This is Gibson House, and this was the station headquarters. It's now used by a number of companies as office space. This and Gibson Road are named after Guy Gibson, the ace World War II pilot, who we've met before. On the right, we've then got the guard room. This was taken over by the Hemswell Antique Centres in 2013 and thoroughly modernised and extended. It has a coffee shop and serves food too. We're on our way out now, and that means passing through the gates of the airbase. What a fascinating place. It's a little bit strange to think that RAF Hemswell started life as a peacetime station in 1937, 2 years before the onset of World War II. Now the area that's got the control tower in it, I can still show you it because there's another access road over there. What you're looking at here is a massive car park for Hemswell Car Boot, which occurs, I think it's on Sundays, not totally sure if that's right, but I think it's Sundays. And this is the car parking area, and basically there's a road over there which I can use to go up that, past these buildings here, and towards the control tower, which I will do in a few moments time. But first I've got to get off this part of the industrial estate first and head back towards the car, and in doing so I'll pass Hemswell Cliff's post office and shop, which are on the A631, so they're next. Now we're on the A631 Gainsborough Road. Opposite us here is Hemswell Cliff's village shop. This was originally RAF Hemswell's post office. Excluding the industrial estate and the antique centres, this is the only retail facility in the village. There's a notice board here as well. Mark off Hemswell Cliff, folks. That's now 74 down in West Lindsey, 54 to go. By the way, if you've come here looking for Hemswell Village, I did that a while ago. It's linked in today's end screen. You can also catch a bus to Hemswell Cliff. This stop is directly outside the shop and post office. The service that runs out here is the 103, which runs between Lincoln and Curtin in Lindsey. And also along here is another memorial. This one remembers 170 Squadron. It features the squadron logo and a depiction of a Lancaster bomber. It was erected by the Squadron Reunion Association and dedicated in June 1985. Oh, and public service announcement. The speed limit on this part of the A631 is 50 miles an hour, and if you go any more than that, that thing will catch you. To finish, we're heading onto Hemswell Business Park to catch the control tower, passing the line of aircraft hangars as we go. These hangars, along with the rest of the base, were immortalised in the 1954 film The Dam Busters. Now, although the Dam Busters are much more associated with RAF Scampton, the layout at Hemswell was remarkably similar. Because of that fact, it was used as a substitute for all the ground-based filming. Scenes were filmed in various locations around the base, including the station headquarters, the front entrance, the officers' mess, and the hangars. At the time of filming, RAF Hemswell operated Avro Lincolns, and several of these aircraft appear in background shots. Here we are then at the control tower. This is now used by the company Biotech 4, who transform waste food into energy using anaerobic digestion. After all that, I think it's time for today's Picture Bit. And also on this access road you've got Hemswell Biogas, which is this huge area here off to the left. And that's it. That's the parish of Hemswell Cliff. A very unusual one, not the kind of place we normally come to. It's not your average village, is it? But you know, that's the beauty of this channel. Sometimes you find things that are a bit different, and it's good to you know, break from the norm effectively and see something a little bit different. The next one though is going to be pretty much, you know, conventional. I'll head there right now. This has been the parish of Hemswell Cliff, and I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.